Hello and welcome to another episode of the James Granström podcast, Super Soul Model Series. Everything on this show is designed to help uplift you and inspire you and help you tune and tap in to your own natural state of well-being. Today's show is all about how to let go of limiting beliefs. If you're enjoying the show, please support it by liking, subscribing and sharing and help spread the message of well-being. So today's show is all about how to let go of limiting beliefs. So what are limiting beliefs? Limiting beliefs are negative beliefs and assumptions that you have about yourself. Your beliefs are shaped by either two things, love or fear. If they come from love, they're positive and expansive and make you feel free. And if they're limiting, it's because they're coming from fear, which is a negative self-belief. Limiting beliefs are the stories that keep you small and keep you stuck, that keep replaying in your life over and over again. They're based in fear and lack and not in love and freedom and expansion. And you often learn them through your parents or from your environment when you were growing up, and perhaps from your teachers when you were growing up. Whoever was looking after you and your environment is where you're absorbing your knowledge and about how your beliefs were being shaped in the world. And by the age of about 8, nearly 10 in some cases, your subconscious mind was wide open and you were absorbing and practicing the thoughts and belief systems of the people who you were brought up with. So your parents will have some positive beliefs, ones that serve you extremely well, and they'll have some negative beliefs that maybe you've absorbed. How can you tell if you've got a limiting belief? Well, the answer to that is you're living it. So if you're feeling stuck in any way in your life, then that's a limiting belief that's holding you back from moving forwards. So we're going to look at some beliefs that may hold you back and then learn how to reform them, reshape them, and package them into new empowering beliefs. So what is a belief? A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And if you keep thinking the same old thoughts, you're going to keep getting the same results, because your beliefs shape your life and your thoughts are creative and your emotions are like magnets. Now, if the beliefs that you hold are keeping you stuck and keeping you small and keeping you mediocre when you want an incredible life, what that means is you're going to have to look into the thoughts that you're thinking and the beliefs that you hold, and you're going to have to turn and reform them and reshape them, which takes time before you can have a new set of empowered beliefs instilled. Because remember, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking, and in order to change a belief, you've got to change the way you're thinking first. So different types of limiting beliefs come in the form of like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I can't handle this, or I'm not healthy, or I'm not rich, or I'm not enough. It's usually I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money. Usually these are the types of beliefs that we've picked up along the way, that we've learned from other people. And then as we've learned them, we think them. And as we think them, they form our beliefs. And then as we go out into the world, these are the filters that our mind sees in our experience. This is what causes you to get stuck. And it's what caused me to get stuck until I started looking at this in a more in-depth perspective. And I'm going to tell you some ways of which I managed to turn them around, which you can too. But it all takes one thing. It takes consistency. And most people won't be consistent because it's the hardest thing to do. And if you're only willing to do what's easy, life's going to be hard. And if you're willing to do what's hard, which means do the work and be consistent, then life will become easy. Limiting beliefs crop up in your life often because of your need for approval. As a child, in those formative years, up until about the age of 10, you were constantly seeking the approval of others, particularly your parents, because your inner child was making assumptions based on, if I do that, I will please them, and if I please them, I'll get rewarded with love. Now, not everyone's always going to be able to give you positive approval. That's just not how life works. Because if we're constantly seeking external approval and validation from other people for what we do, what that means is we're giving other people our power and not giving ourselves the power. So if you're trying to people please, if you're trying to always get the approval of other people, what that means is you're letting go of your own power. And in doing so, what that means is you create limiting beliefs on you, which will cause you to get stuck, which will cause you to feel resentment, which will cause your energy to dip. And when you dip, you've only got access to thoughts that feel bad. So it's really important to power up yourself by looking for your internal validation and your internal sense of self-approval, rather than basing it on other people. Now that's hard to think about first and foremost when you may have never heard this concept before. But if you're constantly needing the outside world to give you a thumbs up, what that means is you will never look within where all the treasure lies. And that was the purpose of the last episode. The purpose of the last episode of the podcast was about power, wisdom, and alchemy, meaning when you appreciate yourself, when you recognize that the treasure is within you, then when you change this internal dialogue with yourself, you change your internal world and your relationship with yourself, then your external world will change as well. It's extremely powerful to recognize that it's your internal world that's actually creating your external world by the thoughts that you're thinking, because your thoughts are creative and your emotions are magnetic. So the good news is you can rewire your belief systems anytime you like, but it does take consistency and it does require new habits put in place. And those habits, when they're formed over and over and over again, create success for you. Now, you're not going to see the success immediately. It's just going to be gradual, like a flower blooming in spring. You've got to plant positive thought seeds in your mind for them to be able to sprout later. So the stories that you begin to tell yourself that are now empowering instead of disempowering begin to help you change and rewire your belief system. So here's my 5-step process to being able to eliminate limiting beliefs. Number 1, identify your limiting belief. Is it a lack of time? Is it a lack of money? Is it that you're not worthy and deserving? Is it that you don't feel enough? Is it because you feel like things aren't working out for you? Identify what that limiting belief was. Either way, it's going to be something based in fear. For me, my limiting belief was I didn't have enough time and I didn't have enough money. Now, that was my experience when I was growing up. I looked at my life as I was growing up and I was all told over and over again, there's not enough, or I'm not enough. And so when I eventually thought to myself, this belief is holding me back, and I'd have success in some areas and then I couldn't make it in other areas. And so I was really questioning, why am I not getting over the line with that? And that's because I was looking at the beliefs that I was thinking and the stories that I'd been told and the stories that were still playing out in my mind and in my world. And when I began to identify and I began to accept what they were, which means I wasn't willing to fight them anymore, that was when I was able to move beyond. And I was able to begin to replace those thoughts and those limiting beliefs with new empowering thoughts. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it all at once. It just means thought by thought by thought. Our minds have neuroplasticity, which means that our minds can be shaped and formed all the time. So when we think a good feeling thought over and over again, eventually that thought is easier to access. And when we look at our lives and we look at our stories and we look at potential limiting beliefs that we've been holding on to, those are the stories that we have easier access to because they're more in our memory. So in order to create new empowering beliefs, you need to do it in the present moment. In the now, you can rewire your brain about what you want next, but it takes practice. That's why whenever we learn a habit, it has to be formed in the mind first before it stores in your body. And what you believe is what's happening in your life. So at my 5-step process, number 1 is identify. Then number 2 on the list is to accept it. Just to accept that that is the limiting belief right now. And when you accept it, it means you're not willing to fight it anymore, which means that you're not willing to fight yourself or life anymore. Because as Eckhart Tolle says in The Power of Now, when you fight life or you fight reality, you will always lose, because resistance that meets resistance creates more. So in order to move past resistance, you have to create a level of acceptance. So it helps your vibe naturally rise. And then number 3 on the list is to replace it with a better feeling thought. So if you're feeling not enough, replace that thought with I'm enough. And if you're feeling like you don't have enough time, say to yourself, I have enough time. I always have enough time. And if you don't have enough money, tell yourself, I do have enough money. I always have enough money. And you cannot change a belief. You cannot change a belief all in one go. So you have to begin to tell yourself that I have enough. And as soon as you tell yourself I have enough, the brain now has to begin to filter to show you that you have enough. So number 4 in my process is to repeat, instill, affirm, and affirm, which means I'm going to repeat new good feeling thoughts and instill them over and over again every single day. And I'm either going to affirm them or I'm going to affirm them. And affirm means I have enough, I am enough, I'm good enough, I deserve the best. And if you're finding that really hard to think, do you know what, I don't think I deserve it, I'm not sure. That's when the affirm comes in very well. And that's the Noah St. John, which is the asking the why questions, as if it's a presupposition to believing what you already believe, which is, well, why am I enough? Why do I always turn out on time? Why do I always have enough time? Why is everything going to be okay? Why am I prosperous and abundant? When you start to change the way that you think, your mind has to begin to change these old limiting beliefs. Now, it doesn't mean that they happen all at once, but they do shift. Now, for me, when I was experiencing a lack of money, it was because I had a program and a story that kept on going on about I don't have enough. No matter how much I earned, I wanted more and I didn't have enough. So when I began to shift and just tell myself I always have enough, and then began to spend less than I had, then I always recognized that I always had enough. So it was the I have enough, even though that was not my experience at the beginning. Then I remember spending less than what I had. And then I kept on saying to myself, I have enough, I have enough, I have enough. Then I recognized that I had enough, and then I was taking actions that backed up my new thinking. And my thoughts were creative and my actions were creative. And then that became my experience. And you begin to shift your beliefs when you recognize your experience begins to change. When I began to repeat, instill, affirm, and affirm, which was I have enough time, I have enough money, this became my experience over and over again. Now, it's something that's taken a little time, but it works, and it works over and over again. So where are you feeling that you have any lack in limitation? Find what the challenge is and flip it. If it's not enough time, I have enough time. And then you can ask yourself, why do I always have enough time? And if it's money, why do I always have enough money? Or I have enough, I always have enough. You see, if you keep going around making statements or not even thinking that you're making statements, which is I'm running out of time, I can't do this, I'm not going to finish that deadline, what you're doing is putting more resistance on your trail, and that creates a cortisol rush, puts the blinkers on your eyes and on the filter of your mind, showing you that you really do not have enough. But if you tell yourself you have enough time and you tell yourself you have enough money over and over again, you're going to recognize that that's what you begin to see. And because the mind does not care, the mind's impartial, the mind is like the micro version of the universe, which says, that which you think more of, James, I will give you more of. And it comes from the Bible, which is, he who hath more shall be given, he who hath more shall be taken away. So it doesn't really matter what you're thinking, the universe will go, right, that's what you're thinking, I'm going to give you more. And that's how the limiting beliefs come in the first place. You accidentally pick them up along the way. And that doesn't mean you were bad, and there's no point beating yourself up about it. That's why number 2, accepting creates peace. But once you've accepted it, then it's time to replace it with a better feeling thought. Then it's time to repeat, instill, affirm, and affirm. And then number 5, once you've done that so many times, you'll begin to see little evidences come in your day. Maybe if it's time, you notice that you're better with your timing. If it's money, you'll recognize that you're having more money come into your experience. You see, you cannot change limiting beliefs overnight. You change them gradually, like nature. They're thought seeds planted over and over again and harvested eventually once you recognize and you keep watering those good feeling thoughts. Limiting beliefs are there to just show you where you're going wrong. They're not there to punish you. They're just there to show you where you've gone wrong and how you can pivot. And it's the pain of your life that causes you the wake-up call to go, I think I need to change need to change what's happening in my life? Why am I not making this? Why am I not making that? A lot of people get to a certain point of making only X amount of money, only to find that once they get it, they can't reach beyond. And the reason why they can't reach beyond is because they're not thinking beyond. So you've got to think beyond in order to reach beyond. So you've got to switch from a mediocre lifestyle into a magnificent lifestyle. And you can only do that when you think differently. Now, there is another way to do that aside from my 5-step process, and it's called Ho'oponopono, and it's a Hawaiian traditional healing process where you're saying these 4 phrases: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, all the time. And what you're doing is you'll keep on cleansing your mind of all the negativity in your life over and over again. And if you're noticing anything in your external world that's causing you grief, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. Over and over again, saying these 4 phrases will help cleanse the mind and will help cleanse limiting beliefs. In order to shift limiting beliefs, you've got to think better feeling thoughts. And then you've got to create actions that will serve you in order to move beyond, so you get those real life experiences. Like I said, making more money comes from I have enough money, and then you're doing what a wealthy person does, which is taking care of their money well, which is managing their money well, which is maybe learning about investing, which is for sure paying off debt. You know, one of my problems was I was in debt for years. And then in order for me to get out of debt, I had to tell myself that I had plenty of money. And even though that was not my experience, I said, well, why do I have enough? Why do I always make enough? And then within about 1.5 years, I managed to make plenty of money to pay off all that debt. That was what was holding me back. It wasn't the actual debt itself. What was holding me back was my thoughts and feelings about it, which was the limiting belief, which was I don't have enough, which caused me to feel that way over and over again. So if you're in debt or you're trying to get out of debt, you've got to change the way you're thinking. And then you've got to change your actions based on it. If you're just changing your thoughts and not your actions, then that's not going to help. You've got to change your thoughts and you've got to change your actions. But you've got to change your thoughts first. So once you began to repeat and instill new mantras and affirmations over and over again, what happens is you will want to beginning to look for evidence, and the evidence will pop up in your day-to-day life. And when you recognize that suddenly you're making an extra little bit of money here, or you're having enough time to do this, whereas before you felt limited on time, you've got to say to yourself, well, how about that? Didn't that work out? Wasn't that easy? You've got to be able to acknowledge the success that you've had, and you acknowledge the success that you had by saying, golly, that worked out. That was easy. Didn't that work out? Wasn't that all right? Wasn't that a blessing? Can you see what you're telling yourself? You're reaffirming and reestablishing what you want again in your life when you recognize little successes throughout your day. You know, when I first started making more and more money, I started recognizing, how about that? Wasn't that a blessing? Didn't that come unexpectedly? Didn't that opportunity come to me so unexpectedly? You know, I teach this with all my clients, and it is so amazing to see what happens with my clients when they just do this very simple thing. Just change those old thoughts and switch them to new thoughts. And those new thoughts, once given a bit of fertile ground and given a bit of legwork by repeating them every single day, what you begin to notice is that your life will begin to shift because of the new good feeling thoughts that you're now activating. Once again, the hardest thing you can do is to be consistent when shifting from limiting thoughts to empowering thoughts. And the reason why it's so hard is because you have these old stories, these old limiting beliefs are more active than these new thoughts. So it's so much easier to return to it. It's a bit like muscle memory. It's mind memory, it's thought memory. Those thought memories are way easier to access than these new thoughts, because these new thoughts are fresh and you do not think them often. But once you get this snowball of positive thoughts rolling in, of these new empowering thoughts, which will eventually become beliefs, because a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So if you start thinking better feeling thoughts, they will snowball and you'll give them momentum, and you'll give that more attention than you will do your old thoughts and those old stories. This will become your new story. So in order to create that new story, you've got to think differently first by recognizing what's holding you back in the first place and replace it immediately. And the difference between people who get mediocre results and people who get magnificent results are because they're willing to practice, they're willing to be consistent. I love looking at sports, and I love looking at Rafa, Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, or any top sportsmen and women for that matter. And the reason being is, what were they doing in their teenage years? They were on the court, they were playing, they were practicing. Whilst everybody out was having fun, these guys were committed every single day to their craft. Didn't mean it was always wonderful, but it meant that they were committed. And that's what's made them go on to have this extraordinary success. So if you're really wanting to shift from having a mediocre life to a magnificent life, you've got to, number one, think differently. You've got to, number two, accept where you're at. And number three, move beyond it by thinking better feeling thoughts. Repeat, instill, affirm, form. And then in time, you'll begin to see the evidence. And when you begin to see the evidence, acknowledge that evidence. When you acknowledge that evidence, what will happen is you will begin to acknowledge that your beliefs are changing. And you know what your beliefs are because you're living them. If you've enjoyed today's show and you've got great value from it, I would love to hear from you. So feel free to DM me on any social media feed at James Granström on Instagram or on YouTube. And I'd love to find out what your main takeaway was from today's show. And if you're listening to this on audio, why not take a screenshot and tag me in it? Let me know what your favorite takeaway was from today's show. I wish you an awesome week ahead. And please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And until the next episode, I wish you green lights all the way.